Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're setting the stage for an exploration into one of the most fascinating, profound, and, honestly, visually fierce aspects of the Shakta Sampradaya tradition. We are going to decode the 10 Mahavidyas, the 10 forms of the fierce divine feminine. If you've ever looked at ancient iconography and wondered what on earth is going on, well, you are in for an incredible ride today.
I mean, seriously, think about this for a second. Why would an ancient spiritual tradition revere such visually terrifying and jarring imagery? We're talking about divine figures depicted standing on severed heads, goddesses literally drinking their own blood, or dressing as a widow who just hangs out in a crematorium. For anyone unfamiliar with these goddesses, it's incredibly easy to either get totally freaked out or just completely misunderstand them. So today, we're going to open up this mystery box and uncover the profound, really beautiful meaning behind all that shock value.
Section 1. The Unconventional Divine Feminine.
All right, let's get right into it. In the Shakta tradition of Sanatana Dharma, the birth of the entire universe is considered to be the result of a woman's power, the ultimate divine feminine. And right at the heart of this ideology are 10 specific, fiercely powerful goddesses known as the Mahavidyas. Now, these aren't your typical serene deities. They represent the raw, unfiltered energy of both creation and destruction. Their names are Kali, Kara, Shodashi, who is also known as Tripura Sundari, Bhuvaneshwari, Chhinnamasta, Bhairavi, Dhumavati, Baglamukhi, Matangi, and Kamala. We actually know about these distinct forms thanks to ancient texts. Specifically, their origins and names trace straight back to the Dhyana Shloka found in the Mahabhagavata and Brihadarma Upapuranas. You might recognize a few of these names right off the bat, but some of the others might be completely new to you.
What's really mind-blowing here is the sheer spectrum of divine energy these 10 goddesses cover. On one end, we had the absolutely terrifying forms of cosmic destruction, like Maa Kali and Chhinnamasta. But on that exact same spectrum, we have incredibly beautiful, serene forms like Matangi and Kamala, who's actually considered a tantric form of Lakshmi. It's essentially a complete 360-degree view of divine power, totally encompassing both the miraculous creation of life and its inevitable destruction.
Section 2. Decoding the striking imagery.
To really get what these goddesses are all about, we have to decode their intense imagery. Because the details in their depictions, they aren't just there for shock value. They are deeply coded spiritual messages. Let's start with the most prominent one, Maa Kali. She is often considered the very first of the Mahavidyas, or even their creator. She's depicted in a stark, naked form, wearing a literal garland of human heads. In her hands, she's holding a blood-stained sword and a severed head. Often, you'll find her in a dark crematorium or a chaotic battlefield, and remarkably, Lord Shiva is just lying perfectly still at her feet. But actually, look a little closer at her hands. While two of them hold weapons of death, her other hand is making the Abhaya Mudra. It's a gesture that literally translates to, "Don't be afraid, I am here." So despite her totally fearsome appearance, she's actually granting ultimate fearlessness to her followers. Next up is, well, probably the most bizarre and shocking image of the bunch, Maa Chhinnamasta. She is depicted literally holding her own severed head. 3 streams of blood are spouting from her neck, one is feeding her own mouth, while the other 2 are feeding her followers. But the real key to unlocking this image is looking right under her feet. She is standing directly on top of Kamadev, the god of love, and his consort Rati. This isn't just some gory horror scene, it symbolizes ultimate control. By standing on the deities of desire, she represents absolute mastery over our worldly and physical desires. Then there's Dhumavati Devi, who's also known as the Vidwa Mata, or the widow goddess. Her depiction is entirely unconventional for a divine figure. She has pale skin, she wears the traditional attire of a widow, and she is shown riding a crow. Now, in ancient societies, widowhood was almost always associated with a complete loss of power and intense vulnerability. And yet Dhumavati is worshipped precisely to grant incredible strength and fearlessness to women. She totally flips the script on societal expectations, proving that absolute power exists in literally every state of being.
Section 3. Avatara Vada and Origins.
So where do they come from? To understand their origins, we have to look at how these goddesses fit into the broader architecture of ancient Hindu philosophy. Specifically, the ancient principle of Avatarvada, which is the concept of divine incarnations. Just like the Vaishnava tradition has the 10 avatars of Lord Vishnu to establish Dharma, the Shakta tradition maps the Adi Shakti into these 10 Mahavidyas, and tantric texts explicitly make this connection for us. In the Gohyati Gohi Tantra and the Total Tantra,
Each Mahavidya is directly compared to an avatar of Vishnu. For instance, Kali is mapped as the companion to Krishna, while Tara is mapped to the Matsya avatar. Just like Rama famously defeated the 10-headed Ravana, Tara Devi is said to have defeated a 1,000-headed demon. They are cosmic forces acting to establish dharma in the universe.
But how did they actually physically manifest? Well, the texts give us two really fascinating origin stories. The first one comes from the Upapuranas. The story goes that Sati wanted to attend her father Daksha's grand yagya, but Shiva refused to let her go because, well, they weren't invited. Furious at being denied, Sati just unleashed her absolute power. She multiplied into the 10 Mahavidyas, completely surrounding Shiva in all 10 directions. It was this staggering, inescapable display of absolute divine feminine authority. The second myth is slightly different, but it's equally curious. Shiva and Parvati were together in a house, and Shiva stubbornly decided he wanted to leave. Parvati, who was entirely determined not to let him go, created 10 fierce avatars to block all 10 doors of the house. Shiva was completely, utterly trapped. Now, on the surface, these just sound like strange domestic disputes between gods, right? But ancient texts rarely deal in simple domestic drama. There is a massive tension building here for a really profound spiritual reveal.
Section 4. Mastering the 10 senses. All right, so here is the crucial point. We need to peel back the layers here. We need to reveal the deep spiritual metaphor hidden just beneath these kind of bizarre stories of blocked doors and trapped gods. So get ready for the aha moment. The house in the story, it actually represents the human body. And those 10 doors Parvati blocked, they represent the 10 physical openings of the human form. Your 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth, the front passage, the back passage, and the Brahmarandra right at the crown of the head. These are the literal doors through which our consciousness interacts with the material world around us.
So let's look at this metaphor fully mapped out. Shiva's stubborn desire to leave the house represents the human seeker, the yogi, whose senses are just constantly running wildly outward toward material and sensory pleasures. Parvati's blockade, the 10 Mahavidyas, represents the supreme spiritual power required to guard those doors. As outlined in texts like the Shakti Sangam Tantra, these goddesses help you master the 5 senses and the 5 physical elements. They literally protect you from losing yourself to the material world, helping you achieve ultimate self-control.
Section 5. Ultimate Feminine Empowerment. Now, the Mahavidyas weren't just internal psychological tools. They had a profound sociological impact, too. This spiritual framework completely redefined the role of women in society during a highly volatile period in history. And this brilliantly illustrates a major cultural shift. For a really long time, the societal ideal for a woman was the obedient, perfectly devoted wife, often modeled after traditional depictions of figures like Sita. But the Mahavidyas, they completely shatter that mold. Their imagery shows them as fierce, independent, and crucially, often dominating male figures, even Lord Shiva himself. They aren't dependent on men. They are the ultimate authorities. So why did this huge shift happen? Well, history provides the catalyst. During the 12th and 13th centuries, the Indian subcontinent faced brutal external invasions. Societies were totally upended, and women were incredibly vulnerable. The traditional model of the protected, submissive wife was just no longer viable for survival. The Shakti Sampradaya brought the worship of these fierce Mahavidyas right to the forefront because society desperately needed deities that inspired women to stand powerfully on their own 2 feet, to be fiercely self-reliant, and to fight back against external threats. And what is truly, literally revolutionary here is how they designed this empowerment. The Mahavidyas deliberately offer a blueprint for female power across every single stage of life. Whether you are a 16-year-old girl represented by Shodashi, a woman in her prime like Kamala, or an aging widow like Dhumavati, the message is crystal clear. In every state, in every form, a woman possesses the exact same supreme cosmic power. She is complete, she is sovereign, and she is entirely powerful in her own right. Which brings us to our final takeaway. Yes, the Mahavidyas are ancient, and sure, their images are absolutely shocking at first glance. But their lessons, they are incredibly modern. They teach us about total mastery over our own desires, facing the truly terrifying aspects of life without an ounce of fear, and finding absolute sovereignty within ourselves, completely regardless of society's expectations. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this question. How will you channel this fierce, independent energy to master your own senses and take command of your life today? Think about that for a bit and keep exploring.